The call came 7 days after Graham and I moved into the Bethesda house, while boxes still lined the hallway like evidence. Fresh paint hung over everything, and Graham laughed with Marjorie beside the cabinet. My phone buzzed with an unknown number, and an older voice breathed my name like he regretted needing it. Meredith Carver. This is Wayne Talbot, and I need you to listen before your husband knows I called. I stepped into the kitchen, turning from Graham's smile as the marble counter went cold beneath my palm. Wayne said one living room camera had never disconnected from his cloud account, and he had opened it by accident. He did not sound curious or hungry for gossip, which made every word feel heavier. Your husband, his mother, and another woman were in your living room while you were at work, discussing papers you should not sign. Through the doorway, Graham's hand rested on Marjorie's shoulder while she showed him something on her tablet. They looked comfortable in the way I had been trying not to name since she moved into our guest room. I asked Wayne what kind of papers, and the silence before his answer tightened every nerve in my body. He had saved the footage, then added, "Do not tell him. Come alone if you want to see it." I told Graham the call was spam, took my keys, and drove to Wayne's apartment near Rockville Pike. He opened before I knocked twice, gray-haired and thin, with the tense decency of someone holding another family's match. His laptop waited on a cluttered desk, already open to a folder labeled with our address. When he pressed play, my living room appeared, familiar and bright, except I was not in it. Graham poured wine for Marjorie, and Celeste Rourke stepped through the side door like she had used it before. She touched my marble counter while Marjorie opened a refinance folder, and Graham said I signed closing papers without reading half of them. Celeste called the house perfect for a donor preview, and Marjorie answered that I would not use it much longer. Graham leaned back and said, "We just need her signature, and one quiet month." And something inside me went still. Wayne did not ask my plan. I requested the original file and metadata, because provenance mattered when people lied. He copied it to a drive and promised a statement explaining how the camera stayed linked. I drove home knowing if I confronted them, they would hide. If I stayed quiet, they would keep talking. The next morning, Marjorie was already in my kitchen, pouring coffee as if the house had quietly accepted her before I did. Graham came down behind her, kissed my cheek, and placed a thick folder beside my mug with practiced casualness. "The lender needs these routine refinance updates soon," he murmured. Smoothing the cover like paperwork could look innocent. I heard Wayne's video inside that word routine, especially Marjorie's calm voice saying, "Careful women, stop reading when language gets boring." I carried the folder to my office at the foundation and shut the door before touching the first page. My work had trained me to read ownership history, insurance riders, and donor agreements that hid consequences inside polite paragraphs. The first pages looked ordinary enough, full of rate locks, payment schedules, and language designed to make attention feel unnecessary. Then I found the durable power of attorney clause buried inside property restructuring, giving Graham authority over refinance, HELOC, and title-related decisions. I read the clause twice, then once more, because disbelief was useless when the sentence stayed exactly where it was. If I signed it, Graham could move faster than my suspicion, and later call every step a misunderstanding. Tucked near the back was a printed email page with a small footer from Rourke Events and a notary contact circled. The sender had written, "Use wife-friendly language and keep the signing tone light," which made Celeste's hand feel present in the room. I scanned every page, saved copies to an encrypted folder, and marked nothing because visible doubt would only teach them caution. By the time I drove home, the folder looked untouched, but the entire shape of my marriage had changed. Graham was waiting near the dining table, while Marjorie folded linen napkins with the serenity of a woman expecting obedience. "Did you get through it?" Graham's voice stayed soft, and I let my tired smile answer before my words did. It's dense, I murmured, setting the folder down. And Marjorie immediately offered that couples refinance all the time. Graham added that the power of attorney only helped him handle boring parts while I was busy with foundation deadlines. I looked at the folder, then at him, and asked why title language belonged inside a refinance packet. His smile paused for half a second before returning, but the pause gave me more than his answer. Later, his phone lit against the patio glass while he stood behind me, and Celeste's message reflected backward across the dark. Did she sign? I kept my face still, because the room had finally started confessing without being asked. That night, I saved the reflection photo beside the Rourke footer, the scanned clause, and the lender pages Graham had handed me himself. They thought the paperwork was the weapon, but they had made one mistake. They gave it to a woman paid to read what everyone else skipped. For the next few days, I lived inside that house as if nothing had shifted, because every ordinary moment gave me something useful. Marjorie kept reaching the mailbox before I did. Graham kept mentioning the rate lock, and Celeste stayed outside the rooms but inside the evidence. Her name appeared first in fragments. A Rourke events footer, a notary contact, a phrase about keeping the signing tone light. By Thursday, she was no longer a shadow behind my husband's phone. She was a woman building a business on my signature. Wayne sent one more file that afternoon, and I watched it in my locked office with the blinds half closed. In the video, Celeste stood at my kitchen island, touching the marble like she was testing it for photographs. "This room will look beautiful for the donor preview," she murmured, while Marjorie opened the refinance folder beside her. Graham looked toward the hallway, as if even an empty house could overhear him, then answered, "We just need the signature and one quiet month." Marjorie added that I would not be using the house much longer, and Celeste smiled like the sentence had already cleared underwriting. That was when the plan stopped being only marital betrayal and became something colder. Graham wanted equity. Marjorie wanted my name removed, but Celeste wanted the donor world I had spent years earning honestly. Her event studio needed rooms, names, introductions, and old money approval she could not buy quickly enough. My house was not her fantasy backdrop. It was her launch strategy. I did not touch Graham's phone, guess passwords, threaten Celeste, or do anything that could turn my evidence into a problem. I kept what they had handed me or exposed themselves: the footage, refinance packet, Rourke footer, notary contact, and lender pages. Then Graham printed something from the home network and left one page in the tray: a launch dinner draft for Georgetown. The host line was blank, but the guest list included 3 donor names from my foundation circle. The next morning, I met Adrienne Bell at her Chevy Chase office, where she read silently before speaking. "Maryland is strict about private recordings, so do not secretly record them," she warned, sliding the footage notes back. "But this video, these documents, and Wayne's statement can be preserved correctly if we move carefully." I told her I had not signed anything, and her face barely changed. "Good. Do not give them emotion. Give me documents." I gave her everything, and Adrienne began turning fear into procedure. She would send preservation letters, flag the lender, and warn the title company that no authority existed without my direct signature. That evening, Graham's phone lit beside his laptop, and Celeste's message appeared before he flipped it over. "Is Monday still clean?" I looked at the boxes along the wall and understood Monday was not their deadline. Adrienne did not make the plan sound dramatic, which made me trust it more. She explained that because I had not signed anything, the house still belonged to me, and our job was not to win it back. Our job was to stop Graham from wrapping my consent around documents I had never meant to approve. "No confrontation until the legal notices land," she said, tapping the refinance packet with one finger. By noon, Adrienne had sent preservation letters to the lender, the title company, and the county land records office. The notices did not accuse anyone loudly, but they made one thing impossible to ignore. No refinance, HELOC, title adjustment, or property-related authorization could move forward without my direct appearance. Verified identification and wet signature. It was not revenge dressed as law. It was a door locked before thieves reached the handle. I opened a new personal account that afternoon and moved my direct deposit before Graham could use joint access as leverage. Adrian warned me not to empty shared funds wildly, because panic could look reckless in court. Instead, we marked disputed property-related transactions, flagged any lender activity, and documented the exact trail Graham had created himself. Every step stayed clean, because their plan depended on me looking careless. At home, Graham acted softer than usual, which told me he believed Monday was almost secured. He brought coffee upstairs, mentioned the rate lock, and smiled when I said I was almost ready. Marjorie found a mobile notary nearby and praised herself for being helpful. Then a florist delivered pale roses with a card that read, "For the new beginning," and no full signature. Only Celeste's slanted C beside the receipt. I placed the card in my desk drawer, photographed the receipt, and sent both to Adrian before dinner. Graham noticed the flowers and looked away too quickly, while Marjorie asked whether I liked the arrangement. I said they were beautiful, because the lie cost me nothing and bought me another hour of their confidence. That night, I suggested we celebrate Monday after the papers were finalized, and Graham's relief filled the room before he could hide it. By Sunday evening, the house felt warmer, not from heat, but from their confidence pressing against every wall. The folder sat on the dining table, the pen beside it, the notary's name written on Marjorie's tablet. Graham spoke about renovations. Marjorie mentioned future entertaining, and neither of them noticed that I never said yes to ownership changes. I only said, after dinner Monday, we can finish everything properly. Later, from the hallway, I heard Graham lower his voice while Marjorie rinsed wine glasses in the kitchen. He said Celeste would handle the donor list after the signing, and Marjorie asked if Celeste knew how to stay quiet. She built the plan, Graham answered, and the words settled into the house more clearly than any confession. I did not need to record him. I only needed Monday to arrive with the table set. Before bed, Adrian confirmed Wayne's sworn statement had been notarized and the lender had acknowledged her notice. The legal lock was already in place, silent and formal, while Graham slept beside me, believing my signature was still the only thing missing. I looked at the unpacked boxes along the bedroom wall and finally understood why I had never rushed to open them. Some part of me had known this house was not waiting to become a home yet. It was waiting to become evidence. Monday dinner tasted like rosemary, lemon, and the kind of silence people mistake for agreement when they are too close to winning. Graham poured wine with a careful hand. Marjorie set the good plates we had barely unpacked, and the refinance folder waited beside my place setting. He talked about rate locks, future renovations, and how this house would finally feel settled once the paperwork was behind us. I lifted my glass and said, "To clear titles," and Graham's smile paused just long enough to tell me he had heard the wrong truth. Marjorie recovered first, praising the salmon and reminding Graham that the mobile notary was nearby if we needed anything official. I thanked her, because politeness had become the cleanest weapon in the room. Graham slid the folder closer after dessert, his thumb resting near the signature tab he had already marked for me. "No pressure," he murmured. Though the pen was uncapped and waiting beside the line where my name would have erased itself, I picked up the pen and watched both of them lean forward without realizing they had moved. That small movement told me everything the documents had already proven, because nobody leans toward paperwork unless something valuable is about to change hands. My hand hovered above the signature line, close enough for Graham's shoulders to soften. Then the doorbell rang, and Marjorie's face tightened before Graham could ask, "Were you expecting someone?" Adrian Bell stood outside with a process server, calm enough to make the whole house feel louder. I let them in, and Graham rose from the table while Marjorie stayed frozen beside the folder. The process server confirmed his name, handed over the notice, and explained that any refinance, HELOC, title adjustment, or property authorization was restricted pending review. Graham stared at the envelope like paper had betrayed him first. "Meredith, what is this?" he asked, and I placed the uncapped pen on the table. "This is the signature you never got," I answered, and Adrian began laying out the pieces they had left behind. The lender had been notified. The title company had been warned. Wayne Talbot's statement was notarized, and the footage had metadata attached. I set the USB beside Celeste's flower card, then added the printed Rourke Events footer and notary contact Graham had given me himself. Marjorie whispered that this was a family misunderstanding, but Adrian answered that hidden power of attorney language stopped being family when property rights were involved. Graham tried softness next, saying we only wanted flexibility, as if changing pronouns could clean the plan. I looked at him, then at Marjorie, and the calm in my voice surprised even me. "Celeste wanted a launch dinner. Your mother wanted my name off the deed. And you wanted my father's money to pay for both." His phone lit on the table before he could answer, and Celeste's name filled the screen like the final witness. I glanced at it once and said, "You should answer. She probably wants to know if her new beginning cleared underwriting." After Adrian and the process server left, Graham sat at the table with the unopened envelope, the dead phone, and the pen he had placed for me. Marjorie stood first, gathering dignity like a coat she could still afford to wear, but her hands shook against the chair. Graham looked at me as if I had become someone unrecognizable between dinner and dessert. "You changed," he whispered, and I answered, "No, Graham." I started reading. Adrian had instructed me not to argue, so I did not give them the performance they expected. Graham packed a suitcase. Marjorie packed hers, and neither of them asked whether they could stay because the paperwork had already answered. At the front door, Graham tried one final, softer voice, telling me we could still talk like adults. I looked at the folder on the dining table and said, "Every adult in this house already spoke through documents." The following week moved quietly, but quietly did not mean gently. Graham's firm placed him on leave after Adrian's complaint raised questions about financial ethics, client trust, and attempted misuse of authorization language. He did not go to prison overnight, because real consequences usually arrive through hearings, disclosures, and doors that stop opening. His client book froze. His license review began, and every divorce filing carried the same ugly word he hated most: intent. Marjorie lost her place on the private school gala committee before she could pretend she had stepped away voluntarily. Nobody needed a newspaper headline when the right women in the right rooms saw enough preserved emails and legal notices. Her old power had always lived inside reputation, invitations, and the careful smile of being included. Once those rooms closed, she discovered how thin influence becomes when people stop returning calls. Celeste tried one email that sounded half apologetic and half offended, as if exposure had inconvenienced her more than theft had wounded me. I forwarded it to Adrian without answering, and by Friday, her Georgetown launch dinner was gone. The venue kept the deposit. 2 donor clients canceled, and the Rourke Events name stopped appearing in inboxes that once welcomed it. She had wanted my house for photographs, and instead her own emails became the exhibit. I kept the house, changed the locks, replaced the security system, and sent Wayne Talbot a handwritten note he never used for attention. Slowly, I opened every box Graham had walked past while planning to empty me from the deed. 6 months later, I stood at a D. C. Foundation reception. leading an acquisition project under my own name. Graham was not on the donor list. Celeste was not handling the room, and Marjorie was not invited. The fresh start Graham promised did arrive, just without him standing inside it. Peace did not feel loud, romantic, or perfect, but it felt clean when I unlocked my own front door. Thank you for staying with this story until the end. Sometimes peace begins the moment we finally trust what we see, not what we are told. If this felt close to real life, share where you're watching from. Leave your thoughts below. And subscribe for more stories about starting over stronger.